Hi, my name is Aman Ghawanmeh, and in a world where who you know, or let's be honest, who your parents know, can make or break your career, immigrants face a lot of issues with networking. Today, we have Willys, who came here from Nigeria in 2005, and Helena, who came here from Peru that same year. They share their network stories, and even the cringy ones. Let's take a look.
Hi, my name is Willys Abali. I'm a resident of Windsor. I moved to Windsor in 2005 as an international student. Right now, I work multiple jobs. I work as a manufacturing engineering manager for a manufacturing company here in Windsor. But I also have my own business for international trade, as well as working on a lot of projects locally to support immigrants and immigration into Canada.
Lovely. And you?
My name is Helena. I work as a plant accountant in a company headquartered in the States. I work in Windsor. I also do multiple jobs. And I am the treasurer of West. That is an organization that helps with women to settle in Canada and also with training and the language.
Lovely.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming here.
Thank you for having us.
It's great to have you. So you just said, you were telling me about how you came here in 2005. Elena, it was the same for you, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, my family came here 2006. So we came here around the same time, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Feels like fate. I want you to tell me, what was the first memory, a vivid one that you have when you first arrived to Canada?
Many memories come to mind. If you talk about when I first arrived, I came in January 2005, just after a snowstorm. So that was my first time leaving my home country, Nigeria, and going overseas. I arrived in Canada with no family, no friends. I knew nobody in Windsor. And then I eventually got into residence, and that my first week was just an experience because I was by myself. I knew nobody. But also, I felt like I was sold a dream, when I saw the brochures of Windsor and the University of Windsor and how beautiful it was. And then coming here and saying, oh, it doesn't look anything like the brochures, right? So my first week was a mix of emotions, of excitement, sad, lonely, nervous. It was an interesting first week in Canada, to say the least.
Yeah, sounds like a disappointing experience. I can relate to that.
I didn't want to use that word, but maybe
did.
one of the emotions I felt.
What about you, Elena?
I came here because of my wedding. My husband was living here. When I came, I had a mix of emotions because the challenge I was running away, it was changing the language, believe it or not. So, and then I'm here trying to speak English in a different country, starting a brand new life. And good thing I came in the fall, which the landscape was very nice. The trees were changing colors, and I was impressed by that because my city back in Peru is a desert. There is no greenery. So it's the desert city, I believe. So I was impressed by the landscape, and at that point, it was like all of excitement. Like starting a new life, in a new, like being married, the landscape, the country, the weather, everything. It was so different. So it was like what life is gonna bring it to me now. That was the first impression.
It's very different than yours, Willis, isn't it?
It is. And so she mentions the language, which for newcomers is a big barrier to overcome. But even outside of that, the accent, right? Coming here and I came from an English-speaking country, Nigeria, but I came with an accent, and understanding other people was something I struggled with just from the get-go. And sometimes it was difficult to say, can you please repeat yourself? So I just nodded, and everyone thinks I understand what you're saying, but sometimes I have no clue what you're talking about. And lots of lessons learned. If I were to get a do-over, lots of things I would do different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand that. Do you feel like after that first week or even month, did your feelings change from that initial kind of shock? Do you feel like there was a development of emotions? Usually I feel, maybe to clarify myself, I think it takes people a couple of months for it to be like, oh, this isn't a vacation. This is a forever move. And I think that kicks in after a month or two. That's what happened to me. What about you guys?
For me, well, I came in October, so it was the cold. I'm like, this is freezing, and the days are so short, because my old country was near the equator, so summer, winter, the length of the days or nights were the same. I came in the fall, it was getting darker at 6, 7, similar to the old country, but the winter getting darker at 5, that was a shock. That's because of the weather. The other part, it was like, okay, the vacation is over, so I need to do something. Like, well, at the first month, I did start taking the English lessons at West, because I realized that I need to improve my English. Like, whatever I learned in Peru, it wasn't enough to be able to communicate and live like a local. And if I wanted to go back to the workforce, it was a must. Because same like Willys, nodding to people, and I'm like, what did they say? Because it's not only English, they do have accent, the Italians, the Arabic people, all kind of background people. But I didn't want to be rude to them, so I was nodding my head all the time. So watching TV in English with the subtitles in English, I had to put away the subtitles in Spanish, so I was able to match the words and how they sound. Taking conversation classes, those were my first few months here to be able to earn confidence while speaking. That was the first step. I realized I had to take me longer than what I thought while being in Canada in the first few months.
Language. Yeah. Do you feel, now that we've started kind of talking about the topic that we're actually here for, your career in Canada, did you, when you felt like you've tackled the language, did that feel like an initial step, or was it kind of, did the two experiences of looking for a job and learning English, did they crisscross?
So for me, I think my journey was different because I didn't necessarily need or start looking for a job when I got here. I was here for school. But it took me a little longer and actually affected my first semester in school because, again, I came struggling with the language, the understanding. But really, when you start school, you need to hit the ground running, right? There's no room for trying to understand the language when you're taking classes every week and you have tests and exams every other week. So my first semester didn't go well. So coming here, I was an A student, and coming here and just struggled to get good grades in my first semester somewhat set me back when I look at it. I think trying to break that barrier as well as trying to go to school in that first semester impacted my grades and set me back a little bit. Luckily, I was able to pivot. Actually, I switched programs to St. Clair College after my first semester. And the experience was different. When in Windsor, I was in the engineering program. When I came from Nigeria, I was the number in a class of 300 students, and help wasn't readily available, right? Going through the language barrier, going through the accent, going through my default personality, I'm introverted. So just trying to get out of my shell. And when you put all these together, it became the perfect storm where everything was just coming in at the same time, right? Missing my family, not having family here. It was a perfect storm for me not to succeed. So I met some students who came here prior to myself, but they came to St. Clair College directly, and they said, hey, here we have smaller classes. We have classes of 15 students, and the relationship with the professor is much better, and everyone helps you succeed. And so I switched to St. Clair College just because I couldn't keep going the way I was. Going at Windsor after one semester. Switched to St. Clair College, and again, smaller classes. The professor knew me by name. I would get called out, right, in front of the class if I wasn't performing, and so those motivations kicked in. I was able to, right, in the class of 15 where you knew everyone, to ask, to say, hey, I didn't get what you just said. And so slowly I overcame the language barrier. Slowly I came out of my shell, and contrast to my first semester in Windsor, I was an A student going right all through St. Clair College. And then I went back to Windsor and finished my degree in engineering. I graduated from St. Clair, where I did a mechanical engineering 3-year program. And then I went back to Windsor, where I did an industrial engineering bachelor's. And here I am today. But it did take a while to overcome that. For me, it did take a while to overcome that first semester, and the inability to hit the ground running impacted me much, much later. But where I am today, I wouldn't change it for the world. I think a lot of these experiences have made me who I am today.
Of course.
And has also allowed me to be able to share my experiences with others, to lay the groundwork for people who are looking to come to Canada, to say, here's what you should and should not do, here's my experiences, here's the things I failed at and I learned, and this is what you should do to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Helena, you talked about your experience coming here, and even though you had a husband here, so you maybe you didn't experience that loneliness that Willys must have felt as a lone international student. But I want to know how did it feel to have somebody who was kind of used to the country and maybe have already been accustomed to the new lifestyle, and then you kind of come into the household and you feel like everything is brand new and they can't relate to you anymore. How was that like to you?
Yeah, it was different because even though my husband was here, we do have different background. Like he's from Europe, from Poland. I am from Peru, so things were different. Like starting with taking the shoes off. That's just an example, because back in Peru we just walk with the shoes on. It's not nice, but we do it that way. Then even though he was here, like he was already working, he was settled. Like I had the house, like I didn't have to look for apartment. But his network, his contacts, they were totally different than what I was looking for. I was looking to go back into accounting. So I realized that I didn't have to worry about certain things, but I did have to worry about how I'm going to get back into my field. But at the same time, I also have to say I relied as a female in West, because they do have the English, the LET. Back then it was the program to English for a working environment. So I followed those programs, but then they have other programs like job counselors. They organize job fairs that I was able to join to build my network. And to also be able to work on myself, because something I realized I had to do, because I had an experience also when I was at West, and when I realized that I was nobody, when I was not sure if it came out right, but that I was, even though my husband, if I wanted to accomplish what I have to accomplish, I was on my own. He's also a newcomer. He came from Poland back in 1989. So even though he knew some people, it's not like we had huge family here. No, it was something small, basically us. So what I realized, I have to start from zero. And I have to start I have this institution, I am at West, I have to start moving the steps forward and ask questions to all the counselors, if I could. Where to go, job fair here, okay, come here to the institution, do mock interviews. Once I was ready, and then keep applying for jobs. I kept, yes, the financial crash of the crisis happened back in 2007, 2008, but I was like, okay, even if an agency employ me, I'm good. So send my resumes to agencies, even if it was basic bookkeeping jobs or admin jobs, send my resume directly to the companies. Like I start sending a lot of resumes, and to the point that finally I start getting phone calls from the agency. But the agency was placing me at University of Windsor, where I could be able to have a good resume. So, okay, so I could name my resume and a good reference. So things start like getting a bit better. Things start opening up. Mm-hmm. And that was my optimism came back. Yeah. And then in the meantime, somebody told me there is a job fair at St. Clair College, you can go. And I found the CPA, back then it was CMA, Certified Management Accountants, there. And then when I came across with them, because I started working, so I kind of wasn't going to West all the time. I was just a bit just working employment. When I was at that job fair, the CPA partnered with West for a program for accountants. And that was like just perfect. For me. Yeah. I was all in. I joined a program they have because my placement through agency was just every few months. So I'm like, I don't want to miss the opportunity. Which program you are running right now? This one. I am in. Let's do it. Until they opened the program and I started. And that's when when I started putting the CPA or CMA back then name in my resume, I finally started getting more phone calls for accounting positions.
You said something really important, is you did everything. You go to every single link that you can. You said something also earlier, you said you felt like you had to start from zero. I think it feels like you're even below that point. It's like a fresh graduate that is Canadian feels like they're starting from zero. But when you come and you don't even have, you don't know a soul, you don't know the language, it definitely feels like it's below zero. And you have to do all this foundational work just to make it up to the zero. From that point onwards, then you can grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to know how it feels to you, Willys, that what she was talking about regarding doing everything that you can. I know you and I previously spoke about this, and I want you to talk about it a little bit, about going to extremes to prove your worth or to be memorable to people.
I think the key word there is memorable. What do I need to do for the people to remember me? I found as a newcomer, like you said, you have to do the extra work because perhaps you're below zero. Or starting from zero. You had to do the extra to be noticed. If you're on par with everyone else, you might not be noticed, and so you have to do the extra work. For me, it was a lot of experiences, and maybe not to myself directly, but what I saw around me. There was a student that started with me, started the same semester that I started. while I went through all my struggles, one thing I found or we saw was this student was always busy. He was at all the events on campus. He volunteered for everything that was available to volunteer for. And he went to everything that was offering free food as well, which is always great as a student, right?
Yeah.
You go to the events where you can get free food. But he was always at events. And somewhere along the line, every Christmas, so as an international student with no family here, Christmases were spent by yourself. In some cases, we spend them together as students. But every Christmas, he was invited to a home for a meal. Every holiday, he was invited to a home for a meal. And so the only thing that was different was he was going to all these events. He was meeting people. And people remembered him when the time came that he was in need, right? Even at graduation, he didn't spend too long looking for a job because he had met so many people that people said, hey, when you graduate, let me know, and we'll see what we can do to get you placed. So that was one experience that from the outside I saw the benefit of networking.
Of course.
But it really didn't hit me. Again, my journey was longer because I went to St. Clair and back to Windsor. So it really didn't hit me until I was about to graduate. And at that time, I had no engineering job experience, so it would be difficult getting, I wouldn't stand out, my resumes wouldn't stand out. I had done farm work. That doesn't help me land a job after graduation, right? I had done call centers just to make sure I had money for school. That would not help me. So it was close to graduation that I realized, you know what? My resume would not stand out, and I don't know anybody who I can reach out to say, hey, do you know someone that knows someone that knows someone who's looking to hire an engineer? Can you refer me someplace? It was at that point I realized I had no network, I had no connections, and I had to purposefully try to make myself stand out. So as a default introvert, it wasn't something that was natural to me. I'm not one who wants to go to events and just meet people. I would rather stay home and and do stuff at home. So I had to come out of my comfort zone, realizing that, hey, to be successful here, I needed that network. I needed to know someone who knew someone who knew someone.
Yeah.
Growing up, the way the family was, you know someone, and you can ask someone else who would ask, and they would always find you someone in the space of what you need. And I didn't have that here. So I had to strategically decide that I had to do the uncomfortable. I had to start going to events. But not just that, I had to make myself stand out. So something I didn't mention to you last time, something that makes me cringe right now is ascots. I don't know if anyone knows the ascot tie. I started wearing ascots.
Oh, man.
Yes.
That's a choice.
I started wearing ascots, and it was one of those, it was a conversation opener. You go to an event, you're the only guy there with an ascot. People remember the guy with an ascot, right? So I started making ascots. But even more interesting, I couldn't afford ascots. No. So Fabricland became my friend. That was something that I started doing. So
You started designing ascots.
I just went, picked up material, cut it up, and made an ascot for myself. So that's something, I mean, at that time I enjoyed it because I met a lot of people. Because I'm the guy with an ascot, and it was always, who is this guy with an ascot, right? And that's, I met people, I met a lot of people that way.
That's genius. It's a wearable conversational starter.
Yeah.
That is very clever.
Yeah. So I still have a few now.
I was just about to ask.
Every now and then I bring it out, but it was something that I did, and again, just purposefully, I decided to do the uncomfortable, to make myself be remembered, to make myself stand out. I also played the trumpet. So growing up, I played the piano a little bit. Coming here, everyone plays the piano, everyone plays the guitar. How do I stand out? I need to do something different from everyone. So I started playing the trumpet. I picked up a trumpet from a friend who had one, and just started trying to teach myself the trumpet, and eventually got one for myself. So the idea was always, from my learnings, how do I make myself stand out? How do I make myself remembered? And it was just going to events, doing the uncomfortable, meeting people, in the hopes that someone will remember me.
Yeah, it's. I can associate. I can really understand that. I consider it to be this idea of the like immigrant excellency. You know, like there's to be always excellence when it comes to being an immigrant. You can't be, if you're just passing by, then you're not contributing as much as you should be. And how are you going to make people respect you and view you as an equal if you haven't gone above and beyond? It can be really tiresome, and it can feel really, I think after a while it can be a little humiliating, because it feels like you constantly have to show up and be loud and be a different version than yourself. The person that you are at home is not the same person that you would take outside. Yeah, I can relate to that.
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely, yes.
When it comes to networking, that's the topic of today's conversation, and it's because it's something that comes up frequently in my group of friends. My friends and I always grunt and moan about the fact that we don't have the connections that we should. It's because we're all immigrants. Our parents came here, and our parents that hardly had time to put food on the table, let alone to go to events or try to make friends in various fields. And it's something that we take for advantage. I think back home, like you said, it's not even, you didn't even think about it. You know, I'm going to say that I need this, and somebody will bring it to me. You know, whether it's through friends or family. But here you start from zero. And the one thing that you hear a lot as an immigrant is, you should volunteer for this thing. Hey, did you know about this? You should volunteer for this. And then we go, yes, okay, I'm going to volunteer for this. And then you volunteer for this thing, and you volunteer for this thing, in the hopes that somebody will remember your face. Somebody will remember something that you said, oh, I'm actually looking into this, or I'm looking into that. Yeah. I wanted to talk about the idea of networking and how I think about it. So back home, I'm from Jordan, and in Jordan there's this word that we use. It's called wasta. Wasta means like a connection. A lot of times it's actually viewed negatively. It's viewed as corruption, right? It's like, I know somebody who can do this thing for you. I know somebody who will get you this job. So it's viewed negatively. So I thought, when I came to Canada, this idea won't exist here, right? Because there's no corruption here. So we'll be fine. And if I work hard and if I do well in school, then I'll get the job that I want. And that's not the case. No. Wasta exists here, but in slightly differently. Maybe here it's not so much about, if you have a rich uncle or something. It's rather about who you know.
Yes.
And then we all try to climb that ladder, right? Helena, I'm interested to know, Helena, how did you create your network here?
Well, my start point was West. I was going to all the events, almost all the job fairs they were organizing. So I was getting to know people. I was trying to talk to different people and to the counselors. That was I would say my second step, because the step prior was working on myself, because I'm shy. So in working on myself, I have to feel confident, comfortable, how I wanted to present myself as a professional. So through West, we help the immigrants to earn the basic skills to find an employment. And I think that's the way my contribution to help immigrants. I also can provide my contact information if needed to reach out to me, and I can refer to West through the different programs. Because today, my daughter told me that her friend from Philippines, she enrolled they go to the same high school, and she enrolled to a program at West, because to help teenagers, girls, to overcome the barriers, to earn experience, to get more comfortable with the Canadian style. you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
My mom went to West, which is she was an ESL student, and it was maybe one of the first things that she did was bring me and go, hey, look, this is my daughter, and this is what she's interested in. And until now, the friendships that she made during that time, it was her idea of a network. She thought, there's so little that I can do for my daughter here in terms of how can I help her succeed. And she's a wonderful, charming woman. And she used that to she has tons and tons of friends. And until this day, she will tell me about opportunities that she heard from her friends. It was her attempt of a network, and it worked. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, Willys, what do you have to say about networks and their importance here?
I think networking is really, 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 the importance cannot be understated of networking for newcomers, for immigrants. And there's likely two layers of networking. I think there's, when you come here as a newcomer, you tend to get drawn towards other newcomers and other people who look like you, who sound like you. So there's that first layer of network, which helps, but sometimes you find as well, if everyone in your network is struggling with the same thing you're struggling with, then you're not really helping each other, right? You're struggling together. I think that's one layer of networking. The other layer is networking outside of your circle, outside of your space, networking with people who don't necessarily look like you or sound like you, networking with people who have networks, because all of a sudden you have an in into another network, and there's likely someone there who can support or help, or who knows someone, or who knows something that can help you. It's interesting, recently, as I've continued to build my network over the years, very recently I had a conversation with someone here in Windsor, and we just had a chat, and I said, hey, here's all these programs that I'm working on. Here's all the programs that I'm working with others on. And it really sparked her interest, because she's like, well, no one knows that someone's working around this in the city, and let me put you in touch with someone who I know that's working on that. And then before you know it, I'm having a conversation with someone else here in Windsor, and then as we're talking, and we're talking for hours on end, I say something and he says, oh my goodness, 2 weeks ago I spoke with someone who was looking for connection in this space, and then he puts me with someone, and it just opened my eyes at the benefits of networking. And right now what I do really is I reach out to people on LinkedIn. I say, hey, I see your interest, and I see that you're working in this space, maybe for newcomers, maybe for immigrants, maybe in the manufacturing space, and I say, hey, I would like to have a coffee with you sometime, or maybe even have a virtual meeting, and just like to know what you do. And it's not natural for me, but I found that there's a lot of value in doing that. So I use that as for my professional network, just reaching out, connecting, having coffees. But if I go back a couple years, I never, the network didn't just appear, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of going to events. It's a lot of meeting people, almost in the back of your mind, wanting to meet someone with a motive to say, hey, I want to meet this person because I want to make myself known to this person. I want them to remember me, so that in the future, when I need something, I know someone, right? It doesn't sound like something you should do, have a motive to go make friends, but in reality, that's what I had to do. And when I graduated, something that stood out to me when I graduated, and I was looking for a job and really didn't know many people in the space I was trying to work in, which is as an engineer. My network helped in the sense that a student that I met at University of Windsor lived in Sudbury, and he said, hey, Sudbury has a lot of programs to keep people here. Sudbury has a lot of programs to bring people here. So he sent my resume to a gentleman who said, hey, here's my phone number, call me. We booked a meeting, he called me, he walked me through my resume. He said, hey, you're a new grad, and your resume doesn't really stand out. Here's what you should go do to make your resume stand out. I hadn't met this person before, and I was in awe that someone spent the time to say, hey, this is what you should do to make your resume stand out and get a job. And that stuck with me because I had a lot of learnings, and I felt like, I have a lot of learnings, and I need to be telling people, I need to be sharing this. So right now, there's several programs that on my work as an engineer, there's several programs that I do. I have mentorship with students at the university. Just recently, I spearheaded a job shadowing program that the University of Windsor runs. We had 20 students come into my workplace and just spent 5 hours with us. These are students at the University of Windsor. They just spent the day with us to say, hey, here's what we do, here's what an engineer does on his day-to-day. And ask me, we had a session called Ask Me Anything. Just ask me anything you want. We had students saying, hey, I'm about to graduate and I have no clue what to do. And I got to share my experience to say, here's what I did. And now those 20 students have a network. They know someone who they can reach out to. And they've already started reaching out to me, asking questions. And they would share as well, say, hey, if you have questions, you can reach out to this guy. So that is something that I've started doing, I'm passionate about as an international student who came to Windsor and struggled with no resources in Windsor to support international students. I think right now there are resources for newcomers. Over the years, resources for newcomers have continued to improve. For international students, though, not necessarily. Even though when you think about it, Windsor has a high population of international students. Windsor has maybe 5,000 students enrolled that are international. And when you think about how much money they bring into the city and the rental industry, right? You have students renting. There's not really a lot of resources. So I spend whatever time I can to offer advice where I can.
Thank you for watching this episode of Halfway to Home. My name is Aman Ghawanmeh, and this series focuses on the journeys of newcomers here in Canada that are often overlooked. Please check out the rest of the series, and thank you for your time.